Hi, I'm Holly. This is our apiary. This is my helper, and our company is actually named after her and my grandmother. So Mae Bee Honey Company is her middle name and my grandma's middle name as well. So that's where we came up with the name. And my in-laws actually created the name. So it's a whole family name and a family process. So we're going to get into the hive, and Adeline's going to tell you a little bit about the hive too while we get into it. What is this, Adeline?
Smoker.
A smoker. And what do we do with it?
Smoke the bees.
We smoke the bees if they get a little too upset, but normally they're really nice. So most of the time we don't even need to use our smoker at all. So we do tie strap them down because in Ohio we get crazy winds and we don't have a lot of windbreak. So they all get strapped down. Our hive tools are pretty much used for absolutely everything. So to pop the lids off, to pop the inner covers off, we always take a look, make sure we don't have anybody hanging out on the lid. And then the lid is a multi-purpose because we're going to stack the boxes on there.
Look at it, do you hear him talking?
Hey Adeline, what do you have in your hand?
A drone.
A drone. What's a drone?
A boy.
A boy. And do you keep them as pets?
Yeah, is this really a drone?
What do you know about drones? What do they look like? How can you tell?
Bigger than the girls.
Okay, what else is bigger on them?
They have bigger eyes.
They do have bigger eyes.
Oh, there's a
Do they have stingers?
No.
No stingers, that's right. The
This
boys
one-
don't need them. So Adeline, tell me about the propolis. What's the orange stuff that's sticky in here that sticks everything together like glue?
Propolis.
Propolis. And they get propolis from where? Trees?
The tree.
The trees.
He's so cute.
He is so cute. This is pollen patty here. So this is a newer hive. We just introduced a queen to this hive, and we supplement them with a little bit of pollen so that they can kind of get going with making babies. Adeline, how many queens are in this hive?
One.
Just one queen. What does she do?
Lay the eggs.
She does? She the only one?
Yes.
She is.
He's so cute, little drone.
What do the boy bees, do they lay eggs?
No.
No, they don't. If you see girl bees out on flowers, they're the only ones that collect the nectar, aren't they? So this frame, when you look at it, they're just starting to draw out this side. So you can kind of see this is a black foundation that we put in to help them along, and then they start to actually draw this out with wax. Their wax they make the wax right from the undersides of their bellies. It's pretty amazing. The youngest bees do that. They graduate from little nurse bees and they do wax making. So this is burr comb where they attach it to the bottom side and the top side of the next box. And this is where we get a lot of our wax for the products. So the partnership with H&H, we actually take this wax and we put it in a pot, we wash it, and then we boil it about 3 or 4 times, and then it gets filtered about 3 or 4 times. And then once it does that, it turns to the bright yellow beeswax that you are familiar with. So little tiny bits of that, and we collect it over a lot of time, and that's where we get the wax for the lip balms and the wax for the lotion bars. And we just kind of clean up and make sure that they're doing well. So I'll see if I can find in here. Might actually split these boxes apart so it's a little bit easier to see. But they're really, really calm. Here's a good frame. All right, so we always take a look on here for the queen. She is marked, but then I'll explain what's on the frame here in just a second. Just want to make sure Queenie isn't on here before we start moving this around too much. So they look really, really good. See how calm they are? Very calm bees, no smoke. They don't mind a whole lot that we're in here. So around here, they put nectar, and that's they'll store that along the sides. And then these little cappings here are actually underneath our bees. So as they emerge, let me see if I can find a young bee, one that just emerged. Let's see, right here. This is a good little one. So it looks like she just emerged out of one of these cappings. They're really tiny, really fuzzy. So they will become nurse bees, and they'll take care of the other bees that are in the hive. And then if you look really close, it looks like the queen's doing a really good job, because all of these cells under here, they look empty, but if you look really, really close, there's eggs and larvae in them. So that means she is laying really well. That means there's a good queen in here, and she has a really good pattern. So same thing on this side. This is all capped brood. And then once they emerge, the bees will clean out the cells, and then the queen will come back through and lay more eggs in them.
Oh.
There's the queen.
Where?
Right here. There she is. She's got that little blue dot on her.
There she is.
This year, 2020.
This year?
Yep.
There she is. There she is.
So she's a little wiggly right now. I'm gonna keep her close down here.
Where's that queen?
She's right there.
Right there.
Yep.
Everybody keep a good eye on her.
That's right. She is, the blue dot every year is a different color. So the blue is for 2020. Last year was green. So that way, it's a good way to be able to tell what year your queens are from, because it's really hard once you have multiple hives to remember what year they came from. So with this, we're gonna put her, do you see how they're all touching her too? So it's called a retinue, and see how they're all touching her? So they get her pheromones and they spread that around the hive. They all touch her, she gets fed, she doesn't have to ever leave the hive to go to the bathroom. The bees don't go to the bathroom in the hive, so they actually leave the hive, but since she doesn't leave, they take it out for her, which is a fun little fact there. So I'm gonna put her back in here. So now we know she's doing well. It's the pollen patty there, just some extra food for them since they're just starting out this year. Adeline, what's your favorite part about the bees?
It's when I get drones.
When you get to catch your drones. I like that. So it looks like, you can see, this is all pollen and nectar. So there's pollen here, nectar. It looks like they're actually starting to backfill where she wants to lay eggs. So that means to us that she might need a little bit more room to lay some eggs. So we may give her a couple of empty frames. What happens during this flow time is there's a lot in bloom, and they get honey bound and pollen bound. And once they get honey bound or pollen bound, they want to leave. And we don't want her to leave. So we have to manage that. So this one they're still working on drawing out. So once you open up the hive and you start moving stuff around, you know things are different, and they start fanning and letting you know that they're a little different here. This is all pollen and bee bread. The bee bread is what they feed to the baby bees. They make this wonderful concoction. It's very nutritious. Pollen and nectar. They put it in just the right amounts, and they feed it to the babies. So this is kind of cool. Do you see how they're all fanning? So their little bottoms are up in the air right here. And those, you can actually see really well right here. They have a little gland on their backside, on their abdomen, and they stick it up, yep, right there. They stick it up in the air, and it's called their Nasanov gland. And they actually are putting a pheromone out into the air saying that this is where you need to go. Our hive's right here. So they'll do that at the front of the entrance. If they ever get confused, they're doing it just because I had this frame out and they weren't sure where they were going. So they will fan that pheromone around to let the other bees know how to get home. The spring, summer, and fall honey is all dictated on what type of flowers the bees are gathering from. For the flowers, you still have your drone?
I still do.
Okay.
He's in my hand. I still have my drone.
For the flowers, you want something that's going to bloom spring, summer, and fall. So like crocuses in this very early spring, or skunk cabbage. Then you would have the summer where you're going to have like your salvias and lavender, Russian sage. They love loosestrife. And then in the fall you'd have asters, things like that. So every flower will dictate how your honey tastes. So that's a really good question, because especially like the basswood blooms, the basswood trees, when they bloom, your honey tastes almost minty. Really amazing how it changes with the nectar. Buckwheat flower produces almost like black licorice colored honey. It's almost black, and that's really, really good if you like black licorice. But it's amazing the different colors. Usually the spring honey is going to be a little bit lighter, summer is going to be a little darker, and then their fall honey is going to be the darkest. So we do, usually the first one is in June or July, and luckily we actually just did one yesterday. So we usually do one spring, summer, and fall. And these hives aren't quite ready for honey supers yet, but they would be stacked on just like the other hives that we have here. And once they get a little bit stronger, then we will go ahead and put honey supers on them. But so we'll extract usually 3 times. Right now we're waiting on the black locust to bloom, which this is a black locust tree right over here. Once those bloom, actually I see some starting to bloom now. So that means that we're gonna need to finish up extracting what we were working on last night and get some empty supers on them, because once those bloom and they're in full bloom, they get extremely busy. So that's one good bloom is the black locust trees, and the next one is basswood trees. And those produce a lot of honey, as well as the clover that's everywhere right now too. So I think we're gonna have a really, really good year. So in a single hive like this, you're gonna have like 50,000 bees. You can look at this girl, how much pollen she has all over her. She was bright yellow. But so yeah, you would have in a typical hive about 50,000 bees. But one bee will only make a tiny, tiny fraction of a teaspoon of honey in her entire life. But once they all work together, you can get hundreds of pounds of honey off of one hive. But you never want to take more than you need. And you always give them enough to get through the winter. And we only take the surplus of honey, so we always keep enough for them. And a lot of the wax, even though we're putting the wax in the lip balms and wax in the lotion bars, a lot of the wax that we use goes right back to the bees. So we actually will coat the foundations, the black foundations, with more wax to get them going. So we never want to waste any of their products, because they work really, really hard for the wax and they work really hard for the honey, so we never take more than we need. Yeah, so local honey, number one, it tastes amazing, but the other perks is that you're getting all of the local flowers in the area. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but now there's pollen coating everything. So even though we're extracting and we filter it twice through like 600 micron filters. Even though we're filtering it, you are getting little specks and of honey and pollen. So not specks of honey, but you're getting a lot of honey and a little bit of pollen. So you eat that pollen, and that pollen is coming from all of the local plants. So buying local honey allows you to kind of let your body get used to all the pollen that's going to be out in the air. We can't tout or say that it helps with allergies or that it's medicinal in any way, but it definitely helps to expose yourself to the local pollen. And a lot of people will actually eat a teaspoon of honey and sprinkle it with a little bit of collected pollen on top and eat that daily as a supplement. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can also consume propolis too, and it's used a lot in cosmetics as well. It can be antiviral in some regards. So that's a really neat thing about the bees, is that everything that they produce has some benefit to them and to us that we're finding. That's pretty incredible. So that is something really, really neat.